Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today here on Teens Talk TV. Our topic for today is reproductive justice. We will be discussing reproductive justice with our lovely guests. Would our guests like to introduce themselves just by telling us their name, the university they go to, and what they're studying at their school? Amber, you could start.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Wynne. I use she, her pronouns. I attend the illustrious Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia, and I'm currently studying health sciences with a minor in criminal justice.
Awesome. Nina?
Hi, my name is Nina Clinton. I am a senior at Lincoln University studying mass communications with a minor in political science.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here with us today. We truly appreciate it. So off with our first question. What is reproductive justice? Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't aware of what reproductive is in general, and then especially what does reproductive justice look like to Black women, girls, and femmes? Anybody can go first.
So my definition of reproductive justice is that is the ability to thrive in every capacity without impediments or limitations. So it's ensuring that you have equal access to a McDonald's as you do a farmer's market. It's ensuring that that you don't live near a landfill because of the toxicity of it. It's ensuring that you have free menstrual products in your bathrooms. Anything and everything is connected to reproductive justice. And what it looks like in terms of Black femmes, Black women, people who identify with the Black female form, I mean, it is anything. I think this conversation right here is reproductive justice because it's an education moment. It's spreading awareness. It's helping uplift the voices that are never represented enough in the media or in any platform really in general.
I completely agree. Nina, do you have anything to add?
I 100% agree with Amber. Reproductive justice to me is just, it's rooted in equality. And for me, it's having the full autonomy over, yourself, your body, and not letting anyone in any capacity dictate that. So I 100% agree.
Thank you both so much for that. So for those of you who don't know, Amber, Dean, and I have a very special connection to one another. We are all fellows for the National Black Women's Reproductive Justice Agenda in our own voice. And this nonprofit organization is one of a kind, and I consider myself very lucky to work for this organization because they're doing more than the public knows to make this world a little bit easier for us to live in. Would you both like to speak about what being fellows mean to you and some initiatives that you guys have taken that are specific to your campus and problems that are on your college campuses that you really think that In Our Own Voice has helped you address and help?
Well, for me, excuse me, I can say that getting the fellowship honestly was one of those kind of like talk about it, be about it for me. It was very much like, okay, this is something that I can do. People can see, people can learn, people can have a conversation. And because of that, that's one of the main things that I've wanted to bring to my campus. And although it was remote for this past year, bringing it to Lincoln's campus in the best way that I could with my campus partner, Chalet, just starting conversations. I think that's where everything starts, especially since, not everyone knows what reproductive justice is. Not everyone knows how to go about that conversation. So just having open lines of communications and letting people know that it's okay to start somewhere to learn was one of like the main things that we wanted to take to Lincoln this year.
So for me, this fellowship, I loved how it created space for Black HBCU voices to come forward because all of us attend HBCUs. I believe there's 12 or 11 fellows. Some of us may have graduated, so my number might be incorrect, but this space was meant for Black bodies at HBCUs, and rarely do we get the opportunity to share about our work. And rarely, globally, when you look at, for example, a lot of my work is centering on reproductive products, so emergency contraception, condoms, menstrual products, that area. So that's kind of the context that I put everything in. But when we look at menstrual product drives, often, it may be like, oh, this is hard, but it's even harder on an HBCU campus because you have to combat the historical context of what the reproductive healthcare system has done to Black bodies. You have to combat the institution. I go to a conservative college, so anything repro is no for them. There's multiple layers to it. So I really appreciate how In Our Own Voice has given us the opportunity to share about our stories. And all of our campuses are so very different, but we all get the opportunity to learn from each other. I've literally pulled something from everyone. Kalei has given me advice on things. I watch Asia. Oh my gosh, Asia does everything. Asia's on NBC. Our fellows are on NBC. Our fellows are in the news. We're making headlines. And part of that is because of this fellowship. So that's one thing I'm always grateful for. Specifically at Hampton, I do a lot of reproductive health work, like I said. I've been working on the emergency repo hotline that I currently manage, where I distribute free reproductive health products to students nationwide and in my community. And then also on the side is the Period Project, which is to ensure that students at Hampton University always have access to free menstrual products. And I'm very happy to say that that project will finally come to fruition this fall.
And all of that is phenomenal. And we are just a super empowering group of women, all of us fellows. We are, like you said, we come from a handful of different backgrounds. We all go to HBCUs. That is what we have in common. But like you mentioned, all of our HBCUs are very, very different. And I cannot stress that enough. And with that being said, how do you think that the students on campus have reacted to the work that you're doing? And where you talk about how your university is a little bit more strict and not as opening as others. So in terms of like responses and reactions, do people like the work? And for those people who don't care for it, what do you have to say to them? And how do you just kind of go about what you're doing anyway? Because this work that we're doing is much bigger than any institute. And it's really important for us to say, no, this is not a taboo topic. Like, this is something that needs to be addressed. So how do you all go through all of that madness?
I think first things first, you have to establish yourself as a person of trust or as an organization that people can trust. I was very lucky to be we're the second class of fellows, I think. The inaugural class of fellows were two beyond amazing Black women who went to Hampton. And I had the pleasure of having them as mentors, but be someone that I consider my siblings. So they kind of set the standard of reproductive health care and what does that mean with regards to reproductive justice on campus. So when then it came my time to become a fellow, it was almost it was a very smooth transition. It wasn't, oh, Amber's trying to do something different. It's, no, I'm following the legacy of Amon Toon and Micaiah Thomas. So I think first and foremost, also, if you go to an institution that is conservative, you have to prioritize the students. Another position I hold, I'm the SGA Vice President. My positions as a reproductive justice fellow and as SGA Vice President clash all the time. Because I'm a representative of the university and I have to be politically correct all the time. And I'm not supposed to be doing a lot of reproductive health stuff. But at the same time, I understand that I'm accountable to my community. And if the students need it, then I have to do it. There are times where I pick up phone calls at 4 a.m. in the morning, students asking for products. And I may not deliver them right away because 4 a.m. I'm not driving. But, I meet that need within 24 hours. And I think that's the most impactful thing. So regardless of what the institution says, regardless of what teachers or faculty may say, the student support has always been there. So I will continue to do this work as long as the students say so.
Thank you, Nina. I know your experience is slightly different, but how do women on your campus and other students react to the work that you've been doing?
Yeah, so mine is very different than Amber's, but it's mostly been very positive. After our event that we had this past March, it was a lot of positive feedback. It was people happy to be in an open and honest environment, Zoom or not. It was people who were like eager to learn also, because, you know, sometimes the topic of reproductive justice is a taboo for people. Like, it's like one of those things where it's just like, nope, not today. So being able to just start that conversation and have people like come to us, like me and Shilay, after and be like, they really enjoyed our event. They enjoyed the honesty of it, the openness of it, the rawness of it. That was like the fire that we needed to be like, okay, yeah, like this is the road that we want to go down, and this is the path we're going to continue to take, because, you know, it's a path for everyone.
I completely agree. So let's get a little bit more personal and talk about you guys just as individuals. I was personally wondering if this fellowship, if reproductive justice has impacted you all's career choices in any way. I know, Nina, you said mass communications. As a person, I'm teaching film, but I like to say I love everything in the field of communications. Has reproductive justice made you reconsider a different career path, or consider a certain route within mass communications that could also go hand in hand with reproductive justice? And Amber, I would love for you to answer after her as well.
It definitely has made me rethink a career choice after college. I think prior to this fellowship, just say this, one of my best friends is a YouTuber. And we used to always joke, and she'd be like, you could do this, like you could, you know, do Shein hauls and all these other, you know, like things that people do on TikTok. But after, you know, not even after, kind of like during this fellowship, I really started to rethink things, because I'm not going to say I didn't know what I wanted to do, but there were just a lot of like balls in the air, you know? And this fellowship made me realize that I want to help people, and like plain and simple, like I want to be able to make a change, whether it's here in Vallejo, California, or whether it's nationwide, whether it's big, whether it's small. I mean, there's so much more than me. And I feel like these past 4 years politically have shown people that. This past year has shown people that. And whatever field you choose to go in, there's something bigger than yourself. And this fellowship and talking to you guys and watching you guys and learning from you guys, I've 1000% realized that, and it's made me want to do more, watching you guys do what you guys are doing in your communities, on your campus. So I've mostly been thinking about working. So there's a Planned Parenthood here, partnering with them, and my friend has done that as well. And just honestly just helping people, whether it's through communications, whether it's through politics, whether it's through both, because I do enjoy both. Yeah.
Awesome. Amber?
So before this fellowship, I was actually a nursing student. And that I made that decision because I wanted to combat Black maternal mortality. Whether that was, I mean, I'm biracial, so it's not always obvious which parent is which, but I have a Black mom, and she was made to feel that her experience when carrying both my sister and I in the womb was normal, when it was anything but. And that really bothered me, that was a common thing within the Black community with regards to birthing bodies, is that a lot of birthing bodies that are Black have issues when it comes to carrying children, conceiving, even a year or two after children, experiencing side effects from giving birth. I just did not appreciate how that abnormality was made to feel like, oh, you're crazy. Oh, that's not, you know, you should be happy that you just gave birth to twins. And it's just like, I gave birth to twins, but I'm suffering from postpartum and no one's helping me. That's what I wanted to do. And then during the fellowship, I had experience before COVID doing clinicals and during COVID. And this fellowship taught me that I don't need to necessarily be that nurse to impact the healthcare system and to change it. Although I do really miss my patients, you need some really funny old people. I had one woman who was Black and Cherokee, and she told me how important being of those two cultures that was to her healthcare, and how it was really important to have someone acknowledge that when it comes to ensuring that her hair looked nice and ensuring that, her body was cleaned properly. That's the stuff that I care about, but also I realize I can make systematic change through healthcare policy. Whether that's through politics or whether that's through running a hospital. Basically, this fellowship opened up my eyes to see that I don't necessarily have to be the person in the room to make the impact. And then if we really want to make change, it has to be systematic. It can't just be one person at a time. Although, like Nina said, even if it's no matter how big or how small, it's still impactful. We really do need systematic change in order to see a future that uplifts Black bodies in general.
I couldn't agree more. And so with that being said, both of you kind of mentioned politics, and that just kind of brings up that Enron Voice just published a Black reproductive justice policy agenda, which is basically just a call to action to all of our political leaders who oftentimes make a lot of promises that they aren't able to keep. Amber, you talked about all the things that your mother went through that were abnormal, which she really had no idea that was the case. And I actually know a young lady whose child unfortunately passed away due to an undetected heart issue that her baby had. And the family was mentioning that just something wasn't right and nobody really took her seriously. So there really is this need for people to kind of understand where we're coming from. And I am so grateful for Enron Voice for putting out this policy agenda and offering a handful of policy solutions to the point where our political leaders don't really even need to think for themselves. They could really just adapt it. I mean, take it for themselves if they want, because that's just how desperate we are for change and for somebody to listen, for someone to hear us, and for somebody to understand us. And so you guys touched on those points a lot, but I also want to talk about the Texas heartbeat bill. There's been a lot going on in the media about that. And there's been, I think there's been a lot of pushback, but being that Texas is the state that it is, there's just so much going on with all of that. Can you guys just share some of your opinions about what's going on in Texas and things that allies of reproductive justice warriors can do to help us fight this fight to make sure that legislation like this is not passed?
Nia, do you want me to go first? Okay, so how do I put this? So I think one thing that's important is that you need to consult your communities. Your communities have the answer, they just haven't been asked yet. So a lot of the people that are, stating that, oh, the heartbeat bill, I don't want this, or whether I want it or whether I don't, a lot of the people that are against abortion are not the people that are most impacted. So it's not always, oh, I don't want to have a baby. Sometimes it's you're not mentally ready. Sometimes it's you're not physically ready. You're not financially ready. The reason really doesn't matter. But I think it's important that we're looking to the communities that need it the most, and that you're looking beyond yourself and beyond your own certain circumstances. Because, for example, as a Christian, I don't agree with everything the Bible says. I don't agree with every branch of Christianity, because I look beyond myself and I see that me necessarily going and doing things that the Bible says I should do, or what any text I should do, it may be oppressive to someone else. So if we're going to put in a religious context, love thy neighbor, do what's good for your community, love the person next to you, that should be what's most important. Abortion is not that really big of a deal, because at the end of the day, our foster care system is beyond overflooded, and those children who have to suffer through that because there's not enough families to take them, that's a problem. Adoption, a lot of the children, specifically who are minorities, who are put into this system, are oppressed. And whether that's they're not getting the same treatment, they're not getting the same clothes, they're not in the good school systems, what have you, it's not fair for you to make your judgment on how someone should live their life, especially if that's not what's uplifting themselves and their possibility of a future, if that makes sense. I know I talked a lot.
It absolutely does make sense. Thank you. Nina, do you have anything to add?
I 100% agree with Amber. I think what's happening in Texas, every time I hear something about Texas when it comes to reproductive justice, it's just like, okay, let me take a deep breath, let me count to 3, let me collect my thoughts, and then let me try to form a sentence. So for me, it kind of takes me back to my definition of reproductive justice and having full autonomy over your body, period. It doesn't matter what the government says. It doesn't matter what the Bible says. And like Amber, I'm a Christian, was raised in the church, everything, but I don't 100% agree with the Bible, as I don't think anyone really should. But it's about control. It's about having control of your own body. It's about doing what is right for you, because nobody knows you like you. Nobody can care for you the way you can care for you. And I think the longer we have to deal with these things of government being in patient rooms and government being in hospitals and governments being in places where they have no business, it's not going to be the outcome that people think it is. It's just going to lead to more, it's going to lead to more, back alley abortions, which is just going to end up harming women. It's going to end up, it's not going to be what they want. I don't agree with it. And I just 100% agree with what Amber said. And until people in government can realize that they have no place in these places, all I can say is that they need to do better.
I completely agree. You guys are just hitting it on the nail, just completely. And I just want to say that the two of you are so very inspiring. No matter to what degree of work that you all do, like you said, Dina, whether it's small or whether it's large, you guys are making a difference, and you guys are impacting so many women who just don't even probably have the words, or there's a word greater than thank you, for them to just express how amazing all this work is that you all are doing. But speaking of other people out there, what do you guys have to say for young women, femmes, anybody who might identify with those terms? What words of advice do you have for them as they hear about reproductive justice, learn what it is, implement it in their own space? How can somebody who's, say, maybe is 12 or 13, take all that knowledge and give it back to their community in a way that, you know, they're able to do? I know it's not always so easy to go out to your community, or someone might not have the time to do a period poverty drive, you know. So what can people do, even if it's really small, to just make these differences? Nina, you can start.
Well, to anyone, like you said, like 12 or 13, it doesn't have to be a huge explosion. You can simply take your research and share it. Social media, honestly, it can sometimes be a weapon, but it's the biggest tool. It's the biggest tool that you have. And you don't have to have 500 followers, 1,000, like it doesn't matter, because what you share, if that reaches one person, that's great, because then from that one person, it could maybe reach 3, and then from 3 to 10, like you just never know where it's going to go. Don't think that not sharing or not talking is the way to go, because it's not. And like if one person listens, that's great. I think the more open people are, whether you're having deep conversations or whether you're just learning, which is, I mean, that's essentially what we're all doing. Like, no matter what role we have, like every single day we learn something new. And I think that's the biggest impact that we can share, is just talking to each other, learning from each other and with each other.
I completely agree. Amber, what do you think? What do you suggest?
One of the most beautiful things about reproductive justice as a movement is that you don't have to create your own space to be here. The space is already made for you. So it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be a fellow at In Our Own Voice, although we'd love to have you. It doesn't mean that you need to be a part of a Black Lives Matter club. It doesn't mean you need to be in Black Student Union. It just means you need to be present. So whether that's staying up to date on politics, whether that's volunteering at your local food bank, whether that's having a conversation at your dining table, that's a phrase I always say a lot when it comes to reproductive health, because we aren't having those conversations at Black dining tables. Having a conversation is reproductive justice. This right here is reproductive justice. So just making space and creating space for yourself, but also creating space for others to step into this movement along with you. That's one important thing. But then lastly, this is a movement of education. So you're not going to get everything correct. Not to put everything in terms of menstruation, but often growing up, we heard menstrual hygiene products. And as the movement has grown, we've realized the word hygiene is oppressive because that makes it seem like periods are dirty. So now we just say menstrual products, or in saying that women have periods, we say menstruators because that's an inclusive term. It's using pronouns. It's messing up, but learning from it. So even if, let's say pronouns, I always try to make sure I include my pronouns so that if there's someone who doesn't identify with binary pronouns, I create that space so that they feel comfortable to share that with me. Because in a system that's oppressive with regards to LGBTQ plus individuals, it's not their job to fix the system. So if I can use my privilege to reach out a hand and help, I should take up that space and do so. But even if you mess up pronouns, apologize, correct yourself, and move forward. It's a part of the learning experience. You're not going to get everything right on the first time. And sometimes going back to the drawing board is how you become more inclusive and more intentional with your work. So I'm still learning to this very day. You don't become an expert in any means. We're all on the same platform. We're all just trying to get from point A to point B in the safest way possible. But being present and realizing that this is a movement of education, I think is the best advice that I can give, because we're all humans, we're all learning bodies, we're all gonna get there at some point, but doing your part, no matter how big or how small, like we all said, is what's most impactful and what's gonna make the difference.
Thank you. I completely agree. And you guys are touching on my very last question of today's episode. Nina, I heard you talk about social media. And so I'm just wondering, what are some resources that everyone watching can use to educate themselves in reproductive justice? What is some literature that you guys might be familiar with that somebody can go to Barnes and Noble and pick up, or better yet, their local Black bookstore? But how can people just, kind of immerse themselves and fully get into this reproductive world that, like you said, is forever growing and changing and making adjustments? Anyone can chime in if they have any good recommendations.
So I'll be honest, when I first got the fellowship, that's honestly when I really started my kind of deep dive into reproductive justice. And I started with In Our Own Voice and the National Association for Black Women Reproductive Rights. I started there. And from there, I would read things, see things. Books, I don't have one off the top of my head right now, but I think I'll say this, and what I did is start somewhere, whether it's with one Google search, whether it's just with looking up the definition of reproductive justice so that you can create your own. Start somewhere, and then from there you can expand. And I think that social media, like I said, it is a tool, and following people who have voices in those spaces is an educational tool as well. So those are just things that I do.
Thank you. Amber?
So like Nina said, in our own voice, number one, definitely would recommend. One of our partner organizations versus sister organizations, Sister Love.
Yes, Sister Love.
They're amazing. Any of our partner organizations are
Black
amazing.
Women in Wellness.
Black Women's Health Imperative.
There's
all
so
of them
many.
are amazing.
So many.
Regarding books, I'm sitting at my desk and In Our Own Voice gave us Christmas presents and they were all RJ books. So I will share those with you. Medical Apartheid. Y'all can't see that. Medical Apartheid. Black Feminist Thought, Pregnancy and Power, Queer Injustice, Killing the Black Body, which is going to be my summer read because I read it briefly a couple years ago. I don't remember any of it, but I suggest that's a classic. Everyone rereads it at some point. So those are really good books to read up on. But also when it comes to social media, I think it's important that reproductive justice is not just a movement for Black lives and Black bodies, but I think it's important when you're receiving information that it is by a Black person, because there are social media accounts out there that claim to know everything. I'm not going to say any of them. One of them is actually getting a lot of flack right now on Instagram, but they claim a lot of white-led cisgender Instagram accounts or Twitter accounts claim to be the experts, but they're not the ones on the ground. They aren't always using the most inclusive information. So I think it's just being intentional about the sources that you consume. Once again, reproductive justice is not a for only Black people movement, but I think it's very important to look for the information from a Black source because it was created by Black women for Black bodies. So that's always good. But also, I think part of seeking sources, because I'm one of those people who I have to shield myself off from certain media outlets because I am an empath and I consume everything and then I feel the need to fix everything. So definitely self-care with that as well, because I like everything that's going on in New York right now, shielding myself off because I just can't. Because sexual assault and survivors' stories are very touchy for me. So that was just something I knew I had to build a barrier there. But that doesn't mean that you can't do research on it. But, you know, building barriers when it comes to seeking information is also important as well, because it can, you know, reproductive justice, once again, is connected to anything and everything. So it can be a little intense, especially when you're reading about the survivor stories. That is a bit much, but all of it is good information. Just ensure that you're getting it from credible sources.
I couldn't agree more. Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's episode. I am so very grateful and thankful to be in the presence of our lovely, beautiful guests, Amber and Nina. Like I've been saying, you guys just do so much phenomenal work, and I cannot to see just where this year takes you as we all wrap up our last year of our fellowship, but I cannot wait to see where your careers take you, as both of you have very promising futures ahead of you, whether it's reproductive justice related or not. But for everybody at home, make sure to check out enreachinc.org for more information related to this topics, upcoming events, and more information about things going on in Prince George's County. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you guys.